Hello, dear hearts. Welcome to Connecting to Consciousness, where the focus is to explore, to question, and examine our perspectives. I'm Nasira Waters. Which parts of yourself do you accept? On the surface, this might seem like an odd question. However, subconsciously, we often either ignore or are unaware of different parts of ourselves for whatever reason. As we go on this journey of curious self discovery, it is important that we have self acceptance. Now, when I mention self acceptance, it's not for the mere just reason to just accept oneself. It's for the purpose of showing up as our full selves, as the best versions of ourselves, for the purpose of transformation. So, as we consider self acceptance, we must be clear about all the parts of ourselves, right? We must be clear about, or rather, have a good sense of all the parts of ourselves. And when I say that, I'm referring to our strengths and our flaws, right? And our blind spots. So, understanding how we show up in the world leads us on a path of self acceptance. Now, self acceptance can only earnestly happen when we understand the complexities of our humanities. Because, truth be told, we can show up in our excellence as well as in paradox and contradiction. Now, a part of this process is also understanding our capacity. At various times and seasons in our lives, we have different levels of capacity. And so, knowing what your capacity is helps you to accept where you are. Because self acceptance isn't just accepting our strengths and our areas of development that are needed, but it's also understanding where we are at various times in our lives. Because sometimes we're in, let's say, a season of solitude where we are really taking time to sit with ourselves and be observant and explore where we are and how we're showing up. Whereas other times we may be in a season of expanding relationships. And in both of those seasons, we will need different capacities or different levels of capacities because they require maybe different levels of energy. And so it's crucial for us to understand where we are at various times in our lives. At the same time, it's also essential that we are clear about some of the ways and areas that prevent us or hinder us from accepting ourselves. So I'm going to share 7 of those that I've observed over time. One being societal expectations. Now, we are clear about societal expectations and how unrealistic they are many times. And when we try to put ourselves in those boxes to meet societal expectations, we are definitely not honoring ourselves. And so it's important to understand that that is not a place to judge oneself and how we show up in the world, societal expectations that are unrealistic. 2, internalized criticisms. Now, these may come from childhood, our youth, even adulthood. It may come from various places where we are being criticized, and then we internalize that and are unable to accept the fullness of who we are. Again, Acceptance is about accepting the strengths and our flaws, right? So keep that in mind as we go on this journey. Number three is vulnerability, a fear of vulnerability. It's often said or believed that vulnerability is weakness. And I have to just be honest that I grew up with that understanding. And the truth is that it takes more strength to be vulnerable, to stand in the truth of who you are and say, this is me, and not have to be right all the time. So, vulnerability shows growth, shows strength, and shows a willingness to accept one's self. But this is an area where accepting oneself can become a struggle, a lack of vulnerability or fear of vulnerability. Next, number four is professionalism, perfectionism. So, perfectionism is an area that we know doesn't exist. It's a non starter. And yet, we can struggle with self acceptance because we're focused on perfectionism. Despite how it may show up with lipstick or swag. It's all a mirage. Perfectionism does not exist. And if one is willing to be vulnerable, that would make itself quite evident. Five, comparison. Some say comparison is the thief of joy. My perspective is that it can be, if not used properly, if not used for us to walk in our wholeness, to serve our best versions, the best versions of ourselves. So it definitely can be the thief of joy if not used appropriately. Six, past experiences or traumas. Now, clearly, if we have past experiences that are extremely challenging for us or traumas, self acceptance is quite difficult. And so, getting the support that is required and doing the work is essential in order for us to embrace self acceptance. Lastly, a lack of self awareness. Of course, we cannot accept anything that we're not aware of. And if we're not aware of it, we cannot acknowledge it. And so these are 7 areas that often prevent us from accepting ourselves, all the complexities of who we are. So, again, as we go on this journey of curious self discovery and this process of self acceptance, so that we can be transformed and move in our wholeness, it's also essential that we are clear about the fact that this is a personal journey that can often encompass many elements. One being a mindset shift, right? Shifting our mindsets so that we can continue on this path of self discovery. And shifting the way that we think, our perspectives and perceptions, the way that we show up and behave, the language that we choose to use. This is essential on this path of self acceptance. Next is introspection. Being introspective about how we show up aids in the process of our awareness, our consciousness being awakened. So, journaling our experiences and asking questions, those why questions about why we do or say the things that we do, or why we think in the ways that we do. So, introspective is another element that is necessary. 3, self compassion. Self compassion doesn't mean that we are not responsible and that we don't hold ourselves accountable, but it does mean that we take the time to be kind to ourselves and that we are clear about the fact that we are human and that we're going to make mistakes and that it's okay as long as our heart posture is one of being humble and a willingness to grow, to learn, and to show up better. Next, seeking this professional support necessary to do the work on ourselves, and that may be a therapist, a counselor, a coach, whatever support is necessary. Lastly, I'll go back to humility because this journey, as I said, is personal, and so being humble is a necessity. And some think of humility as akin to vulnerability in that it may show weakness. And again, quite the contrary. Being humble shows great, immense strength that one does not need to always exert themselves in order to show that there's a sense of self. And one doesn't always need to be right about anything because this journey isn't about being right. As we continue on this journey of curious self discovery, thereby engaging in self acceptance, the only one of the ways in which we do this is going through the process of understanding who we are and how we show up. And so, if you are curious about this journey of self discovery for you, and you know someone who could also benefit from it, I invite you. Let's take this journey together. Until next time, live consciously.